Lando Norris is the Formula 1 World Champion after a tense final race in which Max Verstappen just missed out on a supreme championship comeback by 2 points and didn't play the disruptive role many expected. Verstappen controlled the season finale in Abu Dhabi from pole position, while Norris recovered from a shaky start to score the result needed to win the title regardless of the Red Bull driver's victory on the night. F1's three-way title showdown could barely have been set up better, with Verstappen on pole and poised to make life as difficult as possible for Norris and McLaren's other protagonist, Oscar Piastri. And the race proved to be exactly as cagey as expected once Verstappen navigated the start and the first corner in the lead, and Norris was jumped by Piastri, who started on hards and ran a different strategy to the other two. That change of positions from the McLarens, which Norris didn't defend quite as hard as he could have to prevent, complicated things for Verstappen as much as it did for Norris. Yes, it dropped Norris immediately in the red zone, but he survived early pressure from Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc to hold third place, and his race then became all about holding that position to the end, knowing it would be enough to be champion, whatever Verstappen did. And what Verstappen did was just win the race comfortably. He managed his pace to a reasonable degree in the opening stint, but his second stint was all about driving as quickly as he could to ensure the long-running Piastri was not close enough to be a threat on fresher, softer tyres. There was no backing up early on, no slowing down late to try impact things or get in the McLaren's way, which even Piastri felt compelled to ask Verstappen about in the cool-down room after the race, and even Leclerc, in prime position to help take away the title from Norris, says he was expecting Verstappen to play some games at the beginning or end of the race. So why didn't Verstappen do more? Expecting Verstappen to make McLaren's life harder wasn't about assuming he would do anything nefarious. It would have been totally legitimate to back the field up and play some games, as Lewis Hamilton did the same thing to Nico Rosberg in 2016. But Hamilton's tactics achieved nothing, and Verstappen was always skeptical about trying to do the same thing, given the track changes made since 2016 have made doing that harder now. Even though Verstappen says a lot of scenarios were in my head, he felt playing any games would leave him too vulnerable to being overtaken anyway, and with Piastri right behind instead of Norris, he had the McLaren behind him with the least to lose. Piastri being on a hard tyre and running a long opening stint while Verstappen was on a shorter, medium first stint also proved to be a complicating factor. And on top of that, the whole field was quite condensed, so Red Bull was not sure that it would achieve anything other than massively restricting everyone's strategic options and resulting in a big DRS train. In other words, the prospect of someone being able to take advantage and jump ahead of Norris was remote, and the likelihood of him being overtaken in a train didn't seem great. That explains not doing it at the start, and then Verstappen didn't have a choice later on. Piastri's alternative strategy meant there was a window in which Red Bull could have responded to Piastri's stop, pitted Verstappen a second time and emerged just in front, then backed up the McLarens in the final stint. This would have come with the same problem as in the first stint, in that Verstappen wasn't sure it'd work and he might be overtaken. But you'd think it would be a worth a go with the title on the line. Instead, that window quickly closed, so any stop would have put Verstappen behind Piastri anyway, and he focused on closing out a commanding win instead, falling just 2 points shy of a 5th straight title, having been over 100 points adrift of top spot 10 races ago. With Norris pretty much free to focus on getting to the end without any mistakes, the most stressful part of his race came after his relatively early first pit stop. He was the first of the 3 protagonists to pit, which meant he had to clear some serious traffic. Norris did that really well. It was the most accomplished part of his drive, picking off Kimi Antonelli, Carlos Sainz, and then the squabbling Lance Stroll and Liam Lawson with decisive moves on fresh tyres. Maybe it seemed easy, but it was fraught with peril, especially when Lawson, driving for the second Red Bull team, tried to get his place back immediately. And when Norris made it through, he came across Verstappen's Red Bull teammate Yuki Tsunoda, who had started on hards and was left out to impede Norris and help Verstappen as much as possible. Tsunoda told his team over the radio he knew what to do and to leave him alone, but his confidence was misplaced. Tsunoda gave Norris an easy overtake as they exited the hairpin onto the long back straight, just half a second apart, despite fairly desperately weaving to break the toe and make it harder. Then his final move to the left, as Norris attempted to pass on the inside, prompted Norris to move even further to the inside, across the white line, denoting the edge of the track. Norris completed the pass outside of the white line, and both drivers were placed under investigation. Tsunoda for forcing another driver off the track, and Norris for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. The stewards opted to give Tsunoda a 5-second penalty, but Norris was cleared with no further action. McLaren boss Zak Brown called it a dangerous and unnecessary manoeuvre. Tsunoda felt the penalty was very harsh, while Norris said he didn't care as he knew he'd done nothing wrong. Moving to break the slipstream of another car when the following car is a safe distance behind may be acceptable at the steward's discretion, but more than one change of direction to defend a position is not permitted. So Norris being deemed by the stewards to have been forced off by Tsunoda, who was judged to have made more than one change of direction, was enough for the officials to not issue a penalty. It could have been potentially championship changing, but actually the significance of it faded very quickly, other than prompting an amusing tweet from Sergio Perez. Yes, had Norris been given a 10-second penalty, he would have been at risk of finishing off the podium, as Leclerc ended up finishing just 6.7 seconds behind him, which, with a Verstappen win, would have cost Norris the title. But in that situation, McLaren would have surely ordered Piastri to slow down and sacrifice any positions necessary for Norris to be promoted to third. Imagine an environment free from complexity and barriers, where simplicity, security, agility, and performance enable the potential of every enterprise. Kato Networks converges networking and security into a single global cloud-native service with a world-leading single-vendor SASE platform built to secure every user, device, location, and application. Kato creates a seamless and elegant customer experience that effortlessly enables threat prevention, data protection, and timely incident detection and response. Using Kato, businesses easily replace costly and rigid legacy infrastructure with an open and modular SASE architecture based on SD-WAN, a purpose-built global cloud network, and an embedded cloud-native security stack that's ready for whatever your business needs. No more patchwork solutions, legacy add-ons, or decades of IT complexity, just scalable, agile, enterprise-grade networking and security for every business everywhere. Kato empowers you to move faster, grow stronger, and stay secure. It's peace of mind built into everything you do. Welcome to Katopia, your vision for effortless IT realized. Learn more at katonetworks.com. Verstappen was magnanimous in defeat post-race and said he actually feels better now versus this time last year, when he had to drag the title over the line as Red Bull's form nosedived. But one line of questioning post-race really irked him, that if he hadn't driven into George Russell and picked up a penalty in Barcelona, he'd have been world champion. When this was put to Verstappen, he replied, "You forget all the other stuff that happened in my season. The only thing you mentioned is Barcelona." And he then said to the reporter in question, "Are you giving a stupid grin now?" Pointing out he's had a lot of early Christmas presents from his rivals in the second half of the season, from McLaren and its drivers' own missteps. The Russell incident didn't seem like much at the time, given Verstappen was already fading from view in the apparent two-horse McLaren race. But it's one of many developments through the year that if we could go back and watch it all again for the first time, while knowing Max would have this late season surge that he's had, so many things become so much more significant. The Spain error is the obvious one, but there's also Kimi Antonelli spearing Verstappen at the top of the hill on lap 1 in Austria, Verstappen's half spin at the safety car restart in the wet at Silverstone, and Red Bull's awful Hungary weekend, where Verstappen ended the race a frustrated 9th. And in fairness, Verstappen has already pointed to the Barcelona red mist as a key regret of his, but that isn't where he really lost the title, nor any of those other individual incidents. It's obvious that the big limitation was Red Bull's inconsistency before the summer break. It very rarely had a car faster than or equal to McLaren, and would usually flirt from second to fourth best, or sometimes even worse. If how Red Bull compared to the McLaren from the Italian Grand Prix onwards had been the case all year, clearly Verstappen would have had more opportunities to win. That's primarily what has cost him the title. Verstappen wasn't 100% perfect, and might have been champion if he was, but no driver, no champion has ever been. It's a very harsh standard for anyone to seriously hold him to, and Verstappen has come as close to meeting it as anyone probably ever has, and certainly closer than either McLaren driver, even if Norris makes for a very worthy champion.